He, a skeptical tycoon, doubted goodness. She, a young teacher, was the target of ridicule from wealthy parents. During an unannounced visit to the school, William witnesses Rachel being humiliated. He sees her passion defending her students, her intelligence and integrity. Something breaks within William. He defends her and declares, "You can laugh at her bank account, but I've fallen for this teacher's soul and passion." Watch this story to the end. You will be surprised. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing, the alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m. as always. Rachel Adams opened her eyes in the small room she shared with her younger sister, Ashley, who was 17. The two-bedroom house in the outskirts of Queens was still quiet, but she knew that in a few minutes, the hustle and bustle would begin. Her mother, Donna Sue, would already be preparing breakfast before leaving for work as a housekeeper in 3 different homes. And her father, John, would be double-checking his blood pressure medication before catching the bus to his job at the factory. Rachel got up slowly, trying not to wake Ashley, who was still sound asleep. At 30 years old, she carried the responsibility of being the only one in the family with a college degree, an achievement that had taken years of night classes while working during the day. Now, as a teacher at PS 205 in the neighborhood of Far Rockaway, she earned just over $2,000 a month, but every penny was precious to help with household expenses and Ashley's dreams of going to nursing school. The cracked mirror in the bathroom reflected her tired but determined face. Rachel tied her brown hair in a simple bun and straightened the white blouse that was already a little faded from many washes. She didn't have money to update her wardrobe, but she always kept her clothes clean and well cared for. "Dignity can't be bought," her mother used to say, and that phrase echoed in her mind every morning. In the kitchen, she found the usual note from her mother. "Honey, there's coffee in the thermos and toast with margarine. Love you, Mum." Rachel smiled, put the note in her bag, as she did with all the others, and left for another day of work. The bus was crowded as always. During the 40-minute ride to school, she graded papers and prepared the day's activities. Her 5th-grade students were her passion and her strength. Many came from families even more humble than hers, and she saw in each of them an opportunity for transformation. Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world, she repeated constantly, quoting Nelson Mandela, even knowing that few understood the magnitude of those words. Across town, in the upscale neighborhood of the Upper East Side, William Montgomery awoke in his 4,000-square-foot penthouse with a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. At 42 years old, he led Montgomery Tech, a conglomerate that operated in everything from software development to social responsibility projects. His net worth exceeded $800 million, built with intelligence, business acumen, and an impressive ability to anticipate technological trends. But all this material wealth had failed to fill a void that grew day after day. William had learned, painfully, that money attracted self-serving people. His last 2 serious relationships had ended when he discovered that the women were more interested in his bank account than in his personality. The last one, Priscilla, a socialite he had met at a charity event, had tried to sell intimate photos of him to the press when the relationship ended. Since then, he maintained a deep cynicism toward people and their true intentions. That Thursday morning, while drinking his espresso prepared by the housekeeper, William reviewed the reports from the Montgomery Foundation, the philanthropic arm of his company. Among the projects under review was a proposal to invest in basic education in the outskirts of Queens. The project involved the renovation and modernization of underprivileged public schools, as well as the implementation of computer labs and training programs for teachers. "Mr. Montgomery," said Helen, his executive assistant, entering the office, "you have a meeting at 10 o'clock with the Foundation Board to discuss the educational projects, and at 2 o'clock, the video conference with investors from London." William nodded. But something in the report on PS-205 caught his attention. The numbers showed an institution with poor infrastructure, but with above-average regional approval rates. What intrigued him most was a footnote mentioning that the school had developed an innovative literacy project using makeshift resources, led by a teacher who achieved exceptional results even with extreme limitations. "Helen, cancel my afternoon schedule," he said, closing the report. "I want to make an unannounced visit to this school. No prior warning, no entourage, just me driving my own car." Helen looked at him in surprise. In 15 years working for William, she had never seen him make an impromptu visit to a social project. He always kept his distance, analyzing everything through cold numbers and reports. "Sir, are you sure? The area is complicated and without security. I'm sure. I need to see with my own eyes if it's worth investing $2 million in this project." At 2 o'clock that Thursday afternoon, two completely different realities were about to meet in the yard of PS-205. Rachel, who had spent her lunch break helping a student with difficulties in math, was walking towards the office when she heard raised voices coming from the main entrance. A black BMW had stopped in front of the school, causing a stir among the students leaving recess. William stepped out of the BMW and observed the surroundings. The school was smaller than he had imagined, with walls in need of paint and a cracked concrete yard where dozens of children played with contagious energy. The rusty iron gate was open, and he could hear the sound of voices coming from the classrooms. There was something there that his reports couldn't capture, a vibe, a pulsating life that contrasted with the physical precariousness of the place. He walked to the office, where a middle-aged woman greeted him with barely concealed surprise. "Can I help you?" asked, clearly intimidated by the presence of the tall man in the impeccable suit, whose appearance screamed money. "I'm William Montgomery from the Montgomery Foundation. We'd like to evaluate the school for a possible investment in improvements." The secretary's eyes widened. "Oh my, Mr. Montgomery, let me call the principal, Mrs. Davis. She's going to be—" "Actually," William interrupted, "I'd prefer to do a casual observation first. May I take a walk around the school?" As he walked through the narrow hallways, William noticed the details. Handmade posters by the students covering the peeling walls, a makeshift library in a corner with donated books lovingly organized, teachers who clearly strive to create a welcoming environment with minimal resources. There was something there that touched him in a way he couldn't explain. That's when he heard voices coming from the yard. A group of well-dressed women, clearly out of context in that environment, were talking in a loud and disdainful tone. William approached discreetly and immediately recognized the type. Upper-class mothers who were probably there for some social project or charity event, flaunting their moral superiority while showing contempt for the reality they found. "Just look at the state of this school," said a blonde in designer glasses, gesturing with disgust. "How can these children learn anything here? And the teachers?" Another laughed, pointing discreetly. "Look at that one's clothes. Looks like she bought them at a flea market." William followed the women's gaze and saw Rachel walking towards them, carrying a stack of graded papers. She wore a simple navy blue skirt, a white blouse that had seen better days, and flats that, although clean, showed signs of much wear. But there was something in her posture, in the way she walked with her head held high, that immediately caught his attention. "Good afternoon, ladies," Rachel said with a polite smile. "I'm Rachel Adams, a fifth-grade teacher. How can I help you?" The women exchanged sneering glances before the blonde replied, "Oh, how lovely. We're from the Helping Hands Moms Committee at St. Cecilia's Academy. We're here to understand the needs of this underprivileged community." The condescending tone was unmistakable. William felt a growing discomfort as he perceived the humiliation disguised as charity. "It's admirable what you do here," another woman continued, "considering the limitations. It must be difficult to teach when you have so little, isn't it?" Rachel kept her smile, but William noticed how her fingers tightened slightly around the papers. Actually, ladies, I believe that the richness of an education lies not in material resources, but in the passion to teach and the thirst to learn. My students have taught me that creativity flourishes precisely where there are challenges. How cute, the third woman laughed. But let's face it, honey, without computers, without labs, without proper books, what are these children going to do in life? Aren't we being unrealistic? My children will have the opportunities they deserve, Rachel replied, and William could feel the passion growing in her voice. Some of my former students are already in college. Others have found decent jobs. Education transforms lives, regardless of where it happens. Oh, sure, the blonde said with a cruel laugh. And you, teacher, have you managed to transform yourself too, or are you still here? The silence that followed was cutting. William saw the blush rise on Rachel's cheeks, but she didn't lower her eyes. I chose to be here. This is my vocation and my mission. Vocation, another laughed. What a nice word for someone who didn't really have a choice, isn't it? I imagine that a public school teacher's salary doesn't allow for much glamour. At that moment, something broke inside William. He had spent years dealing with superficial and self-serving people, but he had never witnessed such gratuitous and cruel humiliation. And there was something more. The way Rachel stood her ground, defending her students and her profession, even when being personally attacked, awakened in him an admiration he hadn't felt in a long time. He approached the group with firm steps. "Excuse me for interrupting," he said in a controlled but authoritative voice. The women turned, surprised. I couldn't help but overhear the conversation. Rachel looked him directly in the eyes for the first time, and William felt an unexpected electricity. There was intelligence there, wounded dignity, but also a strength that impressed him. "I'm William Montgomery, from the Montgomery Foundation," he continued, seeing the immediate recognition on the faces of the wealthy women who completely changed their posture. "And I must say that I have rarely found so much superficiality and lack of character gathered in one place." The silence was absolute. Rachel looked at him with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Who was this man who appeared out of nowhere to defend her? "You talk about limitations," William continued, "but the only limitation I see here is your inability to see true value. This teacher possesses something that all your money can't buy: integrity and genuine passion." The women, visibly embarrassed in front of a figure who clearly belonged to the same social world as them, mumbled hurried apologies and quickly walked away. Rachel remained standing, looking at William with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Thank you," she said finally, "but you didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did," he replied, "and I need to talk to you about the future of this school." Before she could answer, the principal appeared running, breathless. "Mr. Montgomery, what an honor! If we had known you were coming, oh my, you've met our Rachel. She's our star, you know." The most innovative projects come from her mind. William didn't take his eyes off Rachel, who seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. "That's exactly what I need to talk about. Can I visit you tomorrow to discuss the details of the investment? I would like Professor Rachel to participate in the discussions. After all, she seems to know better than anyone the real needs of this school." The night had been long for Rachel. She barely managed to sleep, replaying the scene in the yard in her mind and trying to understand the intentions of that man. William Montgomery. She had researched him on her sister's phone and discovered that she was facing one of the richest businessmen in the country. Why would someone like him be interested in the opinion of a public school teacher? Why had he defended her like that? On Friday morning, Rachel arrived at school earlier than usual. At 8 o'clock sharp, the black BMW parked again in front of the gate. This time, William didn't come alone. An elegant middle-aged woman accompanied him, carrying a leather briefcase. "Professor Rachel," he greeted, and she noticed how his voice sounded different without the anger of the previous day. "This is Helen, my executive assistant. We hope we're not disrupting your routine." "Of course not," Rachel lied, having rearranged her entire schedule for the meeting. The principal has prepared the conference room. For the next 2 hours, William listened attentively to Rachel's explanations about the school's needs. She spoke passionately about the lack of updated books, the broken computers in the only computer lab, the dreams of the students that could become reality with a little more support. Helen took notes, while William observed not only Rachel's words, but the way her eyes lit up when she talked about education. "You created a reading project using only donated books," he commented, flipping through one of the reports Rachel had prepared. "How did you manage to increase the literacy rate by 40% in just 1 year?" Rachel smiled, and William realized how even more beautiful she became when she spoke about what she loved. "I discovered that children are more interested in reading when they find stories that resemble their reality. So I started writing short narratives using the students' own names, situations from the neighborhood, but always with hopeful endings. They see themselves as protagonists of their own stories." "You write?" William asked, genuinely interested. Rachel's face closed slightly. "They're just little texts for the students, nothing important." But William had caught something in her hesitation. Helen, sensing the tension, suggested a break so they could see the school's facilities. As they walked through the hallways, William noticed how all the staff and students greeted Rachel with genuine affection. A girl of about 10 ran up to her. "Miss Rachel, my mom said the rich man is going to renovate our school. Is it true?" Rachel knelt down to be at the child's height. "We're still talking, Lily, but what matters is that you continue to study hard, regardless of any renovations." William observed the interaction carefully. There was a natural tenderness in Rachel, a way of connecting with children that couldn't be faked. When she stood up, their eyes met again, and this time neither of them immediately looked away. "Why did you choose to be a teacher?" he asked when they were alone in the small schoolyard. Rachel hesitated. "My family always valued education, even without being able to invest much in it. My mother worked her whole life as a housekeeper, but she always said that education was the only inheritance she could give me." "And your parents? Do they support your choice?" "My father died when I was 15, Rachel said, her voice getting lower. "Cancer. We didn't have money for proper treatment. He always said I had a talent for writing, that one day my stories would change lives." William felt something contract in his chest. "Do you still write? Besides the stories for the students?" Rachel looked at him distrustfully. "Why are you interested in that?" "Because I recognize passion when I see it, and you clearly have a passion that goes beyond teaching." For a moment, Rachel seemed about to open up, but then she regained her composure. "Mr. Montgomery, I appreciate your interest, but I don't understand why a man like you would care about the life story of a teacher like me." "A man like me?" William repeated, and there was a hint of bitterness in his voice. "And what kind of man do you think I am?" "Rich, powerful, used to getting everything you want." William laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "If you knew what I really want and can't have." He stopped abruptly, realizing he had revealed more than he intended. Helen appeared at that moment, interrupting the growing tension between them. "Mr. Montgomery, we have the video conference with London in an hour." William nodded, but his eyes remained on Rachel. "Professor, I would like to invite you to dinner tonight. There are aspects of the project I would like to discuss in a more private setting." Rachel looked at him as if he had suggested something absurd. "Dinner? I don't think that's appropriate." "Why?" "Because we're from different worlds, Mr. Montgomery, and I've learned that when different worlds meet, it's usually the smaller one that gets hurt." His answer surprised her. "What if I told you I've already been hurt enough in my own world?" There was something vulnerable in his voice that made Rachel hesitate. "What do you mean by that?" "That maybe I have more in common with you than you imagine. That maybe I've also learned that you can't always buy what's really worthwhile." Rachel studied him for a long moment. There was a sadness in his eyes that contrasted with all the confidence he displayed. "Why are you doing this?" "Because yesterday, when you defended your students and your vocation in front of those women, I saw something I haven't seen in a long time. True courage, integrity that isn't for sale. And because—" he hesitated, "because there's something about you that makes me want to be a better person." The silence stretched between them until Rachel finally replied, "There's a simple diner downtown, Tony's Pizza. If you really want to talk about the project, I can meet you there at 8. William smiled, and Rachel realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen on his face. Perfect. When he left, Rachel stood in the yard, watching the BMW disappear around the corner. For the first time in years, she felt something she had buried deep inside herself since the last time she trusted someone. Curiosity about a man. But along with curiosity came fear. The last man who had awakened her feelings had discovered her secret dream of being a writer, had read her hidden manuscripts, and then had used that information to humiliate her publicly when she refused his advances. She unconsciously touched the locked drawer in her desk, where she kept hundreds of handwritten pages, stories that were born from her soul in the silent early mornings. Dreams she hadn't dared to share with anyone since Richard, 5 years ago, had spread to half the neighborhood that the teacher thought she was a writer, turning her most intimate passion into a source of ridicule. Maybe William Montgomery was different, or maybe he was exactly like all the other men who had passed through her life, interested only in what they could take from her. Tony's Pizza was located on a busy street downtown, far from both Rachel's and William's worlds. When she arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, she found him waiting at a table in the back of the restaurant, clearly out of place in the simple environment, but making a genuine effort to fit in. He had traded his suit for a button-down shirt without a tie and jeans, a touching attempt to appear more approachable. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing up as she approached. The dinner began formally, with William talking about the technical details of the investment in the school. But gradually, the conversation took more personal turns. Rachel discovered that behind the facade of the successful businessman was a lonely man who had lost his parents at a young age and built his empire more out of a need to prove his worth than out of pure ambition. "My mother died when I was 16, he said, absently fiddling with his napkin. "Cancer too. My father never recovered, started drinking. I lost both of them in the same year, her to the disease, him to alcohol and depression." Rachel felt an unexpected connection. "I'm so sorry. That must have been very difficult." "The worst wasn't the loneliness," William continued. "It was discovering after I became rich that people only approached me for what I had, not for who I was. I learned to distrust everyone." "Then why are you here with me?" He looked her directly in the eyes. "Because you're the first person in years who looks at me as if I were just a man, not a blank check or a business opportunity." Rachel's cell phone rang at that moment, interrupting the growing intimacy between them. It was Ashley, her sister. "Rachel, you need to come home now." Her voice was desperate. "Mom fainted at work. We're at New York Presbyterian Hospital." Rachel's blood ran cold. "What happened?" "The doctors don't know yet. She was cleaning her boss's house when she fell. Please come quickly." Rachel got up immediately, her hands trembling. "I need to go. It's my mother." William immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. "I'll take you." "You don't need to. Rachel," he touched her arm gently, "let me help." The drive to the hospital was tense. Rachel tried to call Ashley, but the line was always busy. William drove in silence, respecting her anguish, but she could feel that he was genuinely concerned. At the hospital, they found Ashley crying in the waiting room. She was a younger version of Rachel, with the same expressive eyes, but now red from crying so much. "How is she?" Rachel asked, hugging her sister. We don't know yet. The doctors are running tests. Rachel, what if it's something serious? How are we going to pay for the treatment? It was then that William discreetly approached a nurse and, after a quick and private conversation, returned to the sisters. I managed to speak with Dr. Howard Becker, one of the best cardiologists in the hospital. He will examine your mother personally. Rachel looked at him confused. How did you... He's a personal friend. Don't worry about that now. 2 hours later, Dr. Becker came out of Donna Sue's room with a serious expression. Your mother had an episode of severe cardiac arrhythmia, probably caused by stress and overwork. She's stable now, but she'll need ongoing treatment and some more detailed tests. And how much will it cost? Rachel asked, her voice almost disappearing. It's all taken care of, William interrupted. My company's health insurance will cover all the costs. Rachel stared at him, incredulous. You can't do that. I already did. Why? William hesitated for a moment, then said with a sincerity that disarmed her. Because I know what it's like to lose a mother for lack of adequate medical resources. And because I care about you. Ashley looked from one to the other, realizing the emotional tension that was growing between them. Rachel, who is he? Before she could answer, William introduced himself. I'm William Montgomery, a friend of your sister. That morning, while waiting in the waiting room to see Donna Sue stable, something fundamental changed between them. Rachel, exhausted and vulnerable, fell asleep on William's shoulder. He remained still for hours, just watching her face in repose, feeling a protection and tenderness that he hadn't experienced in a long time. When she awoke, at 5 a.m, their eyes met in a new and dangerous intimacy. Why are you doing this for me? She whispered. Because you reminded me of who I was before I became just a rich man, he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Because when I'm with you, I feel real. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of the doctor with good news. Donna Sue was fine and could receive visitors. But as they walked down the hospital corridor, Rachel knew that something irreversible had happened that night. She had allowed him to see her vulnerable, had accepted his help, had felt his protection, and worse, or better, she had realized that she was starting to care about him too. Outside the hospital, while William spoke with Helen on the phone, organizing the details of the health insurance for Donna Sue, a freelance photographer who worked for gossip magazines snapped several photos of the couple leaving together in the early morning. The image of William Montgomery, one of the most coveted bachelors in the country, protecting an unknown and clearly humble woman, was worth a lot of money. The next day, while Rachel cared for her mother at home, ignorant of what was to come, the photos were already being sold to the leading celebrity magazines in the country. The headline would be devastating: Billionaire and the Teacher, New Romance or Social Interest. What had begun as a gesture of compassion and a genuine connection was about to turn into the scandal that would change their lives forever. On the following Monday, Rachel arrived at school with a strange feeling that something had changed. The looks she received from her colleagues seemed different, some curious, others embarrassed, as if they knew something she didn't. It was only when the principal called her into her office with a tense expression that she discovered the reason. Rachel, I need to show you something, Mrs. Davis said, handing her a gossip magazine with the cover turned down. It came out this morning. When Rachel turned the magazine over, she felt the world collapse. There she was, leaving the hospital next to William in the early morning, with a smaller photo showing the two of them talking intimately at the pizzeria. The headline screamed, Billionaire William Montgomery and the Mystery of the Poor Teacher, Romance or Charity. Her hands trembled as she read the cruel article, which speculated about her true intentions and suggested that she might be taking advantage of the businessman's generosity. The text insinuated that William's social interest in underprivileged schools had taken a personal and questionable turn. Oh my God, Rachel murmured, feeling nauseous. How did they get these photos? That's the least of our worries now, the principal said with concern. The problem is that the Department of Education has already called 3 times this morning. They're questioning whether our school is suitable to receive investments, whether there are conflicts of interest. Before Rachel could answer, her cell phone rang. It was Ashley, hysterical. "Rachel, there are reporters at our door. Mum is desperate. They're asking if you're dating a billionaire, if he's paying for her treatment, if our family is taking advantage." Rachel's heart raced. "Get out of the house now. Go to Aunt Mary's and take Mum with you. I'll handle this." She hung up the phone, her hands shaking with anger. How could she have been so naive? How could she have believed that a man like William could be genuinely interested in her without ulterior motives? Now her family was being exposed, her reputation destroyed, and worse, her students and colleagues would pay the price for her naivete. The school phone rang again. It was Helen, William's assistant. "Professor Rachel, Mr. Montgomery would like to speak with you urgently." "Tell your boss," Rachel replied in a controlled but pained voice, "that I have nothing to say to him, and that from today our school has no further interest in his foundation." Across town, William had just come out of an emergency meeting with his public relations team when Helen gave him Rachel's message. The fury in his eyes was visible. "Find out who sold these photos," he ordered. "I want names, addresses, everything." "Sir," Helen said hesitantly, "maybe it's better to simply deny any relationship. An official statement clarifying that it was only philanthropy." "No," William interrupted. "I'm not going to deny anything, and I'm not going to abandon her to the wolves." But there were other pressures building. Beatrice Montgomery, his aunt and only living family, had flown in from D.C. as soon as she saw the news. She entered his office without ceremony, accompanied by two men in suits. "William, we need to talk. These are the family lawyers." "Aunt Beatrice." "Don't Aunt Beatrice me," she interrupted. "Have you completely lost your mind? A public school teacher. Do you know what this could do to our reputation, to our businesses?" One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Montgomery, we already have information about this woman's family. The mother works as a housekeeper. The father died leaving debts. There are indications that she may be taking advantage of your generosity." "Get out of my office," William said in a dangerously low voice. "William," Beatrice continued, "you don't understand. Richard Allen is already spreading rumors that he's known this Rachel for years. He says she's always been ambitious, that she's tried to take advantage of other men before." The name Richard made William pause. "Who is Richard Allen?" "A real estate developer." "Real." "He claims that he dated her a few years ago and that she always dreamed of climbing the ladder. He's willing to give interviews, William, with intimate details." William felt a pang of doubt, quickly suppressed by anger. "You hired this man to defame Rachel?" "We didn't need to hire anyone," the lawyer said. "He volunteered. Apparently they ended badly and he has resentments." Beatrice approached her nephew. "William, you're too smart to let yourself be fooled by a woman. Stop this before it turns into a bigger scandal. Marry someone from our circle, have children, build a worthy legacy." "What if I told you I've fallen in love with her?" The silence in the room was icy. Finally, Beatrice said, "Then I would say that you're being manipulated by someone much smarter than she looks, and that if you don't stop this immediately, we will have to take more drastic measures to protect the family's assets." After they left, William was alone in his office, looking out the window at the city below. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. Every cell in his body screamed to go to Rachel, protect her, explain that he had nothing to do with that exposure. But his aunt's words echoed in his mind. Smarter than she looks. Could it be that Rachel had orchestrated all this? That the photos weren't just the work of opportunistic paparazzi, but part of a larger plan? Richard's story began to sound more plausible in his mind, poisoned by distrust. Meanwhile, Rachel was locked in her empty classroom, crying for the first time in years. Not just for the public humiliation, but for the pain of having believed that someone could see her as more than just her financial situation. The worst part was that for a few days, She had allowed herself to dream of a different future, had begun to truly fall in love. When she finally managed to compose herself, she found an envelope that someone had slipped under the door. Inside, there was an old photo, her and Richard at a school event 5 years ago, and a typed note. If you don't want more details about your past to become public, end any contact with William Montgomery. You don't belong in his world, and he will find that out sooner or later. Save yourself from the greater humiliation that is to come. There was no signature, but Rachel recognized the threat. Someone was willing to completely destroy her reputation to separate her from William. And the most painful thing was knowing that it was probably William himself or his family who was behind that subtle blackmail. She tore up the photo and the letter, but the message had been delivered. The pressure was just beginning, and Rachel knew that she didn't have the resources or power to fight against a world that saw her as a threat. Wednesday brought Rachel's worst nightmare materialized on the front page of 3 different newspapers. Richard Allen had given a devastating interview, accompanied by old photos that she didn't even remember existed. The headline of the largest tabloid in the city screamed, "Ex-boyfriend reveals she always dreamed of being rich." Rachel read the article with a breaking heart. Richard had distorted everything. Her intimate conversations about dreams of being a writer were transformed into material ambitions. Her financial difficulties portrayed as cold calculation. And worse, he had revealed the secret she kept as a treasure, the manuscript she wrote in secret. She had hundreds of pages written, Richard said in the interview. But they weren't normal stories. They were fantasies about poor women who married rich men. She lived in that fantasy world, always believing that a Prince Charming was going to save her from poverty. Tears blurred Rachel's vision. Her intimate writings, her most personal stories, were being used as evidence against her. The worst part was that some of the stories really talked about love transcending social differences. But they were pure dreams, not calculated schemes. The school phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, curious onlookers, even parents of students wanting to know if it was true that the teacher was conning the billionaire. The principal, visibly embarrassed, called Rachel for a private conversation. "Rachel, I've known you for 5 years, and I know your character, but the pressure is too great. The Department of Education is considering your temporary suspension until this whole situation clears up." "My students," Rachel began, "they'll be fine. But you need to resolve this situation. Your personal life is affecting the entire school." That afternoon, when Rachel returned home defeated, she found Ashley waiting for her with her face swollen from crying so much. "Rachel, Mom is very bad. After seeing today's news, she had another episode. She's blaming herself for everything, saying that our poverty forced you to do this." Rachel ran to her mother's room and found Donna Sue lying down with red eyes. "My daughter," she said in a weak voice, "what have you done? Why didn't you tell me you were getting involved with this man?" "Mom, it's not what it seems. I didn't do anything wrong." "Then why is this Richard saying these horrible things? Why does he have pictures of you that I've never seen?" Rachel knelt beside her mother's bed, holding her hands. "Because he's lying. Because someone is paying him to lie. Mom, you know me. I would never do anything to embarrass us." But she saw the doubt in her mother's eyes, and that shattered her more than any newspaper headline. That night, Rachel locked herself in her small room, and for the first time in years, took out all her manuscripts from the secret drawer. Hundreds of pages written by hand during the silent early mornings, stories that were born from her soul, dreams that she had never shared with anyone besides Richard. And now, he had turned them into weapons against her. Amid her tears, she didn't even hear when someone knocked on the front door. It was Ashley who called her, her voice tense. "Rachel, there's someone here for you." She went downstairs expecting to find another reporter, but it was William. He was standing in the small living room, clearly uncomfortable, but with a determination in his eyes that she didn't expect to see. "I need to talk to you," he said. "We have nothing to talk about," Rachel replied, avoiding looking directly at him. Rachel, I know I had nothing to do with these articles. I'm trying to find out who... It doesn't matter anymore, she interrupted him. The damage is done. My life is destroyed. My family is suffering. I lost my job. You didn't lose your job. I'm going to fix this. The anger exploded inside Rachel. You're going to fix it? With your money, buying more people, paying more newspapers? Do you really think you can fix everything with money? I just want to help. Help? She laughed bitterly. Like you helped when your family decided to investigate my life? Like you helped when they hired my ex-boyfriend to defame me? William looked genuinely shocked. I didn't know about any of that. My aunt, she may have... Of course you didn't know, Rachel said, finally looking directly at him. Men like you never know about the dirty things they do to protect their precious world. You just reap the results. Rachel, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain, she said, her voice breaking. I was a fool. For a few days, I believed that someone like you could be genuinely interested in someone like me. But you were right from the start. I don't belong in your world. And you made sure I never forgot that. William approached, but she recoiled. Rachel, I want you to get out of my house and out of my life, she said, with a firmness she didn't know she possessed. I want you to withdraw my mother's health insurance. We don't want your charity, and I want you to keep your foundation away from my school. We don't need you. You can't be serious. I'm more serious than ever. Go away, William. Go back to your world of glass towers and people like you, and let me try to rebuild what's left of my life. He stood there for a long moment, seeming to want to say something more, but then he turned and left without a word. After he left, Rachel collapsed on the sofa and cried until there were no more tears. Ashley sat down beside her and hugged her in silence. Do you love him? Asked her younger sister. Rachel took a long time to answer. I thought I did, but maybe I only loved the illusion of what he represented, the possibility of a different world. And now? Now we go back to our reality. I'm going to look for a job in another school, in another city if I need to. We're going to start over. That morning, while Ashley and her mother slept, Rachel took all her manuscripts and burned them in the backyard. The flames consumed years of dreams and stories, purifying her soul of the last fantasy she still harbored. When the ashes cooled, she knew that the dreamy teacher who had fallen in love with a billionaire had died in that fire. What remained was a wounded woman, but determined to protect her family and rebuild her dignity, even if it meant never again allowing anyone to get close enough to hurt her again. Across town, William was in his office, alone, looking at the city lights and wondering how he had lost the only real thing he had found in years. He had discovered too late that his aunt and the lawyers had indeed orchestrated the attack on Rachel. But when he went to her to clarify everything, it was too late. The woman who had made him believe in love again had disappeared, replaced by a cold and wounded stranger who had banished him from her life forever. 2 weeks had passed since Rachel had kicked William out of her life. She had managed to get a temporary position at a state school downtown, far from home, but at least also far from the curious glances and gossip. The salary was lower, the structure worse, but she clung to the work like a lifeline. It was on a Thursday afternoon, while returning from her new school, that Rachel found an unexpected person waiting for her at the bus stop. Helen, William's executive assistant. Please, don't run away, Helen said when she saw Rachel's recoiling movement. I'm not here representing my boss. I'm here on my own. Rachel hesitated, but something in the woman's serious expression made her stop. What do you want? To talk. You were wronged, and I have information that might interest you. They walked to a small diner nearby, where Helen ordered 2 coffees before starting to speak. I've worked for William for 15 years, she said. I've seen many women pass through his life, some gold diggers, others just incompatible. But I've never seen him behave the way he behaved with you. Helen, if you came here to try to convince me, I didn't, she interrupted. I came to tell you the truth. William didn't know anything about what his family was doing. When he found out, he had a terrible fight with his aunt. She left for DC the next day and doesn't speak to him anymore. Rachel stirred her coffee without drinking. That doesn't change anything. Maybe it will when you know who was really behind everything. Helen took a folder out of her bag. I hired a private investigator with my own money. What we discovered will surprise you. The first pages showed bank transfers. Rachel saw numbers that didn't make sense until Helen explained. Richard Allen received $50,000 a week before giving that interview. $50,000. Rachel's eyes widened. Who paid him that? That's the problem. The money was transferred by a shell corporation, but we managed to trace it back to the source. Helen turned the page. Priscilla Grant. The name didn't mean anything to Rachel. Who is she? William's ex-girlfriend, the socialite who tried to sell intimate photos of him to the press when they broke up. She never got over the end of the relationship. Rachel felt a chill down her spine. She orchestrated all this. Not alone. She partnered with William's family, specifically his aunt and the lawyers. The plan was simple. Destroy your reputation so that William would be convinced that you were a gold digger, and so he would return to his world. Helen showed more documents, printed emails, phone records, even recordings of telephone conversations between Priscilla and William's aunt. Listen to this, Helen said, connecting a small portable recorder. Priscilla's voice sounded clear. Beatrice, she's a threat. If he marries this poor teacher, goodbye to our influence over him. Goodbye to our joint ventures. We need to end this before it's too late. The response from William's aunt was even more shocking. Leave it to me. I'll find something in her past that we can use. And if I don't find it, we'll create it. Rachel felt nauseous listening to her dreams and intimacies being turned into weapons. Does William know about all this? No, not yet. He suspected his aunt when she started pushing too hard, but he doesn't imagine the extent of the conspiracy. And since you kicked him out of your life, he's not doing well, Rachel. What do you mean? Helen hesitated. He's not eating properly, he's not sleeping. He cancelled all social gatherings, stopped going out. He spends the whole day trying to figure out a way to fix things with you, but he believes that you hate him. And why are you telling me this? Why are you helping me? Because in 15 years of working for him, I've never seen him truly happy until he met you, and because... Helen lowered her eyes. Because I also come from humble origins. I know what it's like to be judged by your bank account instead of your character. Rachel looked at all those documents, feeling a mixture of anger and hope growing inside her. What can I do with this? Even if I prove that I was slandered, the damage to my life is already done. You can get justice, and you can give a chance to the man who truly fell in love with you. Helen, even if all this is true, William and I are from different worlds. That will never change. Maybe not. But you deserve to make that decision based on the truth, not on lies planted by self-serving people. That night, Rachel stayed awake late, rereading all the documents that Helen had left with her. With each page, her indignation grew, not only for herself, but for all the others who could have suffered at the hands of people like Priscilla and the Montgomery family. The next morning, she made a decision. She called Helen. I need more information. Everything you have about Priscilla, about the lawyers, about how they managed to bribe Richard. Are you going to confront them? I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to expose the truth in the same way they spread lies about me, publicly. Rachel, these are powerful people. They've already destroyed my life once. What more can they do? Besides, I'm not going to do this alone. You said you know other cases where they've done this? I do. There are at least 3 other women who have been persecuted or slandered for getting too close to wealthy men from this family over the years. Then let's find them. Let's put all the evidence together, and let's show everyone who the real exploiters are in this story. When she hung up the phone, Rachel felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. Not necessarily of winning back William, that wound was still too deep, but of clearing her name and protecting other women from going through what she had gone through. Ashley, who had overheard part of the conversation, approached her sister. "Are you sure about this, Rachel? These people are dangerous." "That's why, Ashley. If I don't do anything, they'll continue destroying lives. And maybe it's time for me to stop running and start fighting." For the first time in weeks, Rachel smiled. Not a happy smile, but a determined one. The wounded teacher was finding her strength again, and this time she wouldn't fight alone. Across town, William was in his empty office, looking at a photo he had gotten from Rachel's school, a picture of her with her students, smiling genuinely. He didn't know that the battle for the truth was just beginning, nor that he would soon discover how far his own family had gone to destroy the only woman he had truly loved. A week later, Rachel was in the newsroom of the New York Times Today, the same one that had published the lies about her. At her side sat 3 other women. Carol, a nurse who had been stalked after getting close to a cousin of William. Monica, an architect who had suffered a smear campaign for dating a family partner. And Julia, a journalist who had been fired after investigating suspicious business dealings of the Montgomery lawyers. Helen was also present, with 2 suitcases full of documents, recordings, and evidence they had collected during an intense week of investigation. The editor-in-chief, Robert Smith, a 50-year-old man with a skeptical expression, flipped through the documents with growing interest. "This is explosive," he murmured. "If it's true, we're talking about a systematic scheme of slander and defamation." "It's true," Rachel said firmly, "and we want the same front page that destroyed my reputation to now tell the real story. Do you understand that you're messing with very powerful people, that they're going to sue you and this newspaper?" Carol stepped forward. "Mr. Smith, they've already destroyed us once. What more can they do? Besides, the truth is always worth it." 2 hours later, they left the newsroom with the promise that the story would be in the Sunday edition, with a front-page spread and a special report. Robert had been particularly impressed with the recordings, where Priscilla admitted to forging evidence. That Friday night, Rachel was at home, mentally preparing for the storm that would come with the publication of the report, when Ashley ran to her with the cell phone in her hand. "Rachel, William is on television. Look." On the nightly news, William was giving an impromptu press conference at the door of his office. He looked dejected but determined. "I came to the public to clarify a few things," he said, looking directly at the camera. "In recent weeks, an extraordinary woman has been slandered and defamed by people close to me without my knowledge or consent. Rachel Adams is one of the most upstanding people I've ever met, and what they did to her is unforgivable." The reporters fired questions, but he continued. "I discovered that my own family, along with other people, orchestrated a cruel campaign to destroy Rachel's reputation. I want to make it clear publicly. She never tried to take advantage of me. If anyone was exploitative in this story, it was those who used my name and my resources to hurt her." A reporter asked, "Mr. Montgomery, are you confirming a romantic relationship with the teacher?" William hesitated for a moment, then replied, "I am confirming that I fell in love with an exceptional woman who has dedicated her life to educating underprivileged children and who possesses more integrity in her little finger than I have found in my entire social circle. And if she gives me a second chance, I intend to spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of her love." Rachel felt the tears run down her face. Ashley held her hand. "What are you going to do?" asked her younger sister. Before Rachel could answer, the phone rang. It was Helen, excited. "Rachel, did you see the news? William didn't know we were going to expose everything on Sunday. He did this on his own." "Helen, there's more." Priscilla and the lawyers panicked after the press conference. They know they're going to be exposed, and they're trying to make a deal. They want to publicly retract their statements and pay compensation to all of you. On Sunday, the front page of the newspaper carried the headline, "The Truth About the Scandal." How a socialite and lawyers forged slander against a teacher in love with a billionaire. The 6-page report detailed the entire scheme with photos, documents, and testimonies from the 4 women. The reaction was immediate. Priscilla was arrested for racketeering and slander. The lawyers lost their licenses, and William's aunt was indicted on various charges. The following Monday, Rachel was teaching at her new school when the principal appeared at the door. "Professor Rachel, there's someone here to see you." She left the room expecting to find another reporter, but it was William. He was different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but with a humility in his eyes that she had never seen before. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. They walked to the small schoolyard where they sat on a bench under a tree. "I came to apologize," he said, "for everything, for not protecting you, for doubting you, for having a family capable of such cruelty." Rachel looked at him in silence for a long moment. "William, you don't need to answer now. I just want you to know that I've learned a few things in the last few weeks. I learned that you were right. I lived isolated in a bubble, surrounded by people who only wanted something from me. I learned that family isn't just blood. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who betray us the most." He took a deep breath. "And I learned that you made me a better person. Even now, after everything, just being here talking to you, I feel complete. William, Rachel, I love you. Not for what you can give me, not for what you represent, but for who you are. For your strength, your compassion, your intelligence, and if you allow me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that." Rachel felt her heart race. "And your world? Your company? What will they say when they find out you chose the poor teacher?" William smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen on his face in weeks. "To hell with them. I found out that I don't need anyone's approval to be happy. I just need you." He knelt right there, in the simple schoolyard, taking a small box out of his pocket. "Rachel Adams, will you marry me? Not my money, not my status, but me. The man you transformed, that you taught to love for real." Tears ran freely down Rachel's face. "William, And before you answer," he continued, "I want you to know that I've already talked to the Department of Education. You can go back to your original school whenever you want. And if you agree to marry me, I want you to continue being a teacher for as long as you want. I want you to be yourself, always." Rachel looked at that man kneeling before her, remembering the first time she saw him defending her in the yard of the other school. She remembered how he had taken care of her mother, how he had become vulnerable with her, how he had risked everything to clear her name. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I accept." When they kissed there, in the simple yard of the state school, some students who were peeking out the window started to applaud. In seconds, the whole school was at the window, applauding and shouting with joy. 6 months later, Rachel and William were married in a simple ceremony at the church in the neighborhood where she had grown up. Donna Sue, completely recovered and radiant, walked her daughter down the aisle. Ashley was the maid of honor, and Helen, who had become a great friend, was the party planner. The couple established a revolutionary educational foundation where Rachel led the pedagogical projects while William managed the resources. They lived in a comfortable but not ostentatious house in the same neighborhood as the school where she taught, because, as Rachel said, it's important to never forget where we came from and where we want to go. And in the quiet nights, when the world slept, Rachel went back to writing. This time, no more fantasy stories about princes and princesses, but real narratives about real people who find true love in the most unexpected places. Because she had learned that true love cannot be bought, cannot be conquered with strategies. It simply happens when two souls recognize in each other the complementarity they were looking for. The last paragraph of the first book she published read, "The true Prince Charming is not the one who saves the princess from poverty. It's the one who sees her as a queen, even when she feels like a commoner, and who allows himself to be transformed by her as much as she is transformed by him." And so, The teacher and the billionaire discovered that the happy ending is not a destination that is reached, but a journey that is built day after day, choice after choice, love after love, and that sometimes the differences that seem to separate are exactly what makes love stronger, more real, more transformative.